Hello, I am Liffy Joy and welcome to another planty video. As you can see, we're joined by a guest today. This is the humidifier that I got off of Facebook Marketplace. Thank you, Facebook Marketplace. And I'm hoping that's going to be a hint as to what I'm talking about today. I feel like I'm in a club. Just going to redirect that in another direction. Humidity. This is going to be sort of like part of my Plants 101, Botany 101 sort of side section that I want to do on this channel. So it's kind of basically showing you intro to botany, the science behind your plants, because it's really nice keeping all of these things, but do we actually know how they work, how they live, how they breathe, how they function? And I kind of feel like if you know the basics behind that, then you can actually have much healthier plants. So this is something that I myself am just getting into, sort of a bit more, kind of know like the basic levels, but I'm really interested in actually getting to know more of the science behind plants, and I kind of feel like it's nice to share that journey with you. So that's kind of what we're doing today. So I want to show you a little bit about humidity, what it is. So I keep on focusing on the steam. It's going mad, and I didn't bring the remote to turn down the whooshy level. That's the official term. How do we turn it down? No, that's making it go up. I don't know what I've done. I've ruined everything. Oh well, it'll turn back on eventually. So we all know, or hear anyway, that our plants need high humidity, plants need low humidity, but what does it actually mean? It's kind of what I want to share with you today. So I've got a couple of plants to show you, but if this ever turns on as well, to kind of like get the mood going, show you, oh, it started raining. That might be why this is turned off. Because we're in Cape Town, at least, well, South Africa, but Cape Town particularly, we're in the middle of quite an intense drought. And it's summer here in Cape Town, and that's not supposed to be our rainy season. Yet, here we have rain. Not going to complain because we're on water rationing, but it's weird. I'm so distracted by the rain. So there are two types of humidity. There's absolute humidity and relative humidity. Relative humidity is the one that is more relevant to us. Absolute humidity is kind of like the purest form of humidity. It's kind of like the literal mass of water vapor divided by the mass of the air. I think that's what it is. Volume of the earth. And that's measured in kilograms, but that doesn't take into account things like air pressure and temperature and stuff, whereas relative humidity does. So relative humidity is what, like when you go onto your weather app on your phone and it says it's 80% humidity, that is relative humidity, and that's what is relevant to us in our plants and our houses. When you have fuzzy hair, when you're Monica, when you go on holiday and friends and you end up having that fuzz, that is relative humidity, and that's what is relevant to our plants. Relative humidity is how much water is in the air versus how much the air can hold, and this is divided by each other and comes out as a percentage. It also takes into account the temperature and the air pressure, so that's why different areas that have different air pressure have different humidity, and different temperatures have different humidity. So like if you live in the tropics, you're going to be at sea level, lower air humidity, higher temperature, higher humidity, because warm air holds more humidity than cold air. Whereas say if you're here and you're in Johannesburg, which is super high altitude and very high air pressure, even though we do get high temperatures, it's going to be a lot lower humidity overall. So humidity is affected by a lot of factors. That is relative humidity, and that's what we talk about when we talk about humidity for our plants. So we can be all fancy and say the relative humidity or the absolute humidity rather than just humidity. So when we talk about anything, and when I want this bad boy to go on, do something. Make blowing. Yay! Exactly, Rosie. We're talking about relative humidity. Ta-da! First science fact. Hey, Ro. Rosie's here. So as the temperature goes up, so too does the ability of the air to hold water vapor. Oh, Rosie. So that's why your hot, humid jungles are humid, because they can hold more water because the temperature is warmer. Oh, Rosie. This is relevant to us and our plants because humidity, hello. Oh, oh. She's very scared of it. It's okay, Ro. Oh, it's okay, come. Shame, she's so scared. Completely forgot what I was talking about. Okay, I remember what I was talking about now. So humidity is important. She's gonna knock the thing over. Humidity is important because it affects when the stomata open on a plant. Now, I'm not gonna go into depth with this because I'm gonna save that for another botany video. She's looking at all the vapor. But basically, stomata are the breathing pores on a plant, and that is what opens and closes literally like this. They do look like this. I'll put up a diagram somewhere where there's space to show you, but that's how plants transpire or breathe. So they're basically their breathing pores. And humidity can affect when the stomata open. I'll get into why stomata are important in a minute. I've waffled a lot, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cuts. I'm sorry about that, but trying to keep one continuous thing of this is proving difficult. But how is this relevant to us and our plants? Well, plants have lots of different needs depending on where they are from, and they have different adaptations to their form depending on where they're from, and this links to the humidity levels that they need or require or have adapted themselves to. And this is where it becomes important for us to know the needs of our plants. So it all comes back basically to breathing, or in plants we call it transpiration. So again, through those little stomata that do this, that's how they transpire. Rosie, she's just sitting to the side. She looks so sad. Her pupils are like this big. Rosie, it's not going to hurt you. Look, it's nothing. She is distrustful. Surprised she hasn't booked it yet. She used to book our coffee machine. So here's the thing. When plants absorb light, only about 5% of that is converted in their cells to be used for photosynthesis. And then sort of like an excess about, whoa, Rosie literally nearly fell off the table. About 60% of that is then converted into heat in the plant. And that heat needs to go somewhere. It can't just sit in there. It will literally cook the plant. And that's what happens if it can't transpire properly. So basically you want that heat to be able to get out the plant, and it does that through the stomata opening. So when they're open, heat can move through the plant and out of the stomata and create evaporation, which also helps to cool the plant. But if your environment isn't correct, the stomata will remain closed, and that means that excess heat can't get out of the plant and it's stuck inside. Like imagine if you couldn't sweat and all of that was stuck inside of you, it would ruin you. And that's literally what happens to our leaves if they can't release that excess heat that's being absorbed. So it's a double-edged sword for them. They need that to be able to make food, but also if they can't get that excess heat out, they're gonna burn from the inside. So when you see things like yellowing leaves, you know that you perhaps have an issue with the transpiration of your plant. It's actually killing the chlorophyll cells that are inside that are allowing photosynthesis to happen, and this is because they're overheating and essentially cooking. That's not like a true scientific way of describing it, but I feel like it's a nice way of explaining it. But the stomata being open is all, I don't know why I keep on doing this. I have a cacti there and Rosie just shoved her face into it. So the stomata being open is also really important for evaporation because this is what helps pull water through the plant. So basically, sun hits the plant, it photosynthesizes, this causes transpiration, and that pulls water from the roots through the plant up into the leaves, and then transpiration happens, blah, 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 blah. It's a vicious cycle. Okay? But also yummy food is made, which is important. Basically, plants are a big straw, so they're sucking the water through, but they cannot suck if the stomata is closed. The stomata have to be open. So most stomata remain open during the day in a plant, and this allows them to photosynthesize when there's more light in the air. But if the humidity levels are wrong, then the stomata remain closed. They can't photosynthesize during the day, and then it all gets whack, and that's sad for your plants. So again, you can see why it's important to have both the correct light requirements and the right humidity requirements. I'm living for Rosie in this humidifier right now. The problem comes in where water evaporates from your plants through transpiration quicker than it can be transported through from the roots. So this is what happens in our tropical plants. So I'm going to show you my plant of shame. Please do not judge me. This is literally, I'm so sad. It makes me so sad, but this is my Anthurium papillamilium, right? Look how crispy he is. That is all because, oh, he's very wobbly. All because I haven't been able to provide him with the correct environment. How do I know that he needs high humidity? Well, these plants that have thinner leaves, so you can see he's got a very thin leaf and actually quite a thin stem, they have really poor vascular structure. So their straws, I'll go into the actual detail again at a later time, the straws that suck the water up from the roots through to the leaves where they can photosynthesize are really, really thin, and the cells in the leaves are really thin. So that means that when they transpire and they open their stomata, that the water escapes really, really, really quickly. But because everything is so thin, it means that water can't be sucked up quick enough, and that causes this crisping on the edge. And you can see he's super crispy. So this plant and the Syngonium rayi are quite literally the reason that I bought this humidifier. You're looking for plants that have thin leaves, which means they have thinner tissue, which means they're going to have a higher transpiration rate, because these guys are used to living in a jungle environment, a warm, humid environment. That means that they don't have to worry so much about losing water because there's going to be natural water in the environment around them, kind of keeping those transpiration levels in check. But like in my house, where according to Google it's 77%, but according to this, where I'm sitting next to a humidifier, it's only 58%. That's not going to be enough for this guy, hence the crisping. Not so bad on this leaf, but this guy, not good. These are supposed to be beautiful, healthy leaves, and that's all because he's transpiring too quickly. I'm sorry, little plant. So this is going to happen with your plants like your cissus, your calathea, your maranta. So like this guy, Maranta Luca, I just call him Maranta. I'll put the actual name up. He also can get crispy. He's not been doing too bad actually. I thought he was going to be fussier than he was, but you can see he's got one little leaf over here that has some crisp. Nowhere near as bad as that anthurium. That is my plant of shame. But such a pretty guy. This mist feels really nice. So conversely, you have plants that need lower humidity. Now these are mostly plants that come from arid desert areas that have actually developed so that they don't have to rely on their leaves for photosynthesis. So for example, and I'm never going to say this name right, so I actually wrote it down on the back of the recipe. This dude, I think he's known as the old man cactus. I'm hoping that's going to focus. So there's a little guy I planted in the side just to like fill out the pot. Cephalocerius senilus. My handwriting was scrawly, that could be an R. Old man cactus, but he's a perfect example of a plant that has adapted itself to low humidity areas. So basically think of a desert. It is scorching hot during the day and cold at night. So these have developed to live in arid areas where there's low humidity and high heat. So a lot of these plants, a lot of cacti, a lot of succulents have that kind of waxy layer on the outside of them. That's to protect them from losing too much water through transpiration. They also have kind of evolved to sort of not have leaves. So a cacti's leaf is the little spikes. So you can, I hope you can see his little spikes. And also I picked this guy because he also has hair. So you'll see on some succulents, well, they have fine hairy layers, and that's to trap water, which helps them to photosynthesize when they photosynthesize at night rather than during the day. Now, these plants also have less stomata, which means less transpiration, but there is another cool thing that a lot of plants have developed. So some euphorbia, your lithops, things like that. I'm gonna put you down. Maybe I won't. It's quite satisfying holding the plant. Away from humidity. Low humidity plants won't be damaged by high humidity, but they just won't get any benefit from it. I also feel like I'm leaning in now to try to tell you more facts. So some cacti and succulents use this different way of photosynthesizing that's called crassulacean acid metabolism. Very impressed that I remembered that, which is basically where the stomata close during the day, where it's hot and the humidity level is low, and they open at night when it's cooler but the humidity level is high. So they have less stomata, which means less transpiration rate, but they can photosynthesize at night, which is incredibly unusual. But because they would literally fry otherwise, they've evolved and developed this new form of photosynthesis, which is really cool. So you'll find that some succulents will have that as their form of photosynthesis rather than your like standard photosynthesizing during the day and eating the sun, which is pretty metal. I'm into that. So well done, succulents and cacti, for adapting to your environment. So cool. Plants are the coolest. Absolutely amazing. So like I said at the beginning, the thing that you have to remember with your plants is that your relative humidity is going to be dependent on where you live. So again, someone who lives in Johannesburg, which is a good example of somewhere that I can think that has really high humidity, as compared to me down in Cape Town, is going to have very different needs that they need to provide for their plants. So I luckily have more humidity down here by the coast, whereas someone, say in Durban, where you guys get the most humidity, again, you can just have your tropicals growing super easily outside and not have to worry. But for those of us who don't have that luxury, what can we do to make our plants happier? Well, ideally, you want them to be living in probably 60 or 70% humidity, probably even more for this crispy boy. It makes me so sad. He's got some new shoots though, so I'm hoping that the new growth is going to be happier now that I have the humidifier. Exactly, Rosie. But how do you know if your plants are sad and are wanting more humidity? Well, your leaves will curl in a little bit, like this. You can kind of see this has a little bit of curl, not too much. It's actually not as bad as it was. I have a calathea that lives in the bathroom. Before it went in the bathroom, it literally curled its leaves in at the side. It no longer does that, thank goodness. But you will also find that your edges will either blacken or crisp, which is delightful, or just brown a little bit. In your tips as well. Again, that can be a different sign of watering, but on the whole, humidity is where it's at with the crisping. Then you'll see if you water them, your leaves will actually sort of hang quite limply. You'll see in things like orchids, they'll have poor blooming. So there's a lot of things that are kind of, your plants are showing you that are like, I need more humidity in my life, please help Also, something to remember, if you are in winter or live in somewhere that is cooler and you constantly have indoor heating on, indoor heating sucks moisture out of the air. So in winter or in cooler areas, you're going to find that you're going to have to do a lot more to pump up your humidity. So as soon as you switch that heater on, you're going to have to take extra precautions because that electric heating sucks moisture from the air. I feel like I'm in some kind of 90s music video with a smoke machine, like Madonna. I do this. Now, what can we do to increase the humidity of our plants to make them happier overall? That is the ultimate question. There are a couple of things you can do. The first one is misting. Now, misting doesn't really do very much. It helps a little bit. It helps short term. Think about if you're hot one day and you want to cool off a little bit, it kind of links into the humidity. You squirt yourself in the face. You're good for maybe like a minute, and then it wears off. So misting is kind of like a quick solution, but it's not a long-term solution to increasing the overall relative humidity around your plants. Things you can do instead, perhaps. Sorry, I had to turn that off. It started beeping and I don't have my little remote control, and I only know how to control it on the remote control because I'm still learning and it didn't come with a manual. Hey! One thing you can do is put your plant in a pebble tray. Now, full disclosure, I have not had much luck with pebble trays. I don't know if it's just me, if I'm not putting them in a big enough pebble tray. I don't know what it is, but I personally have not had good luck with pebble trays. The theory is that you place your pot without a drainage hole in the bottom, so you put it in a catch pot, or you seal up your bottom, which I wouldn't do. That would be a foolish thing to do. But say put your plant pot in a catch pot, like I've done with this one. So my horrible little plastic pot is inside this much nicer pot, and put that inside a pebble tray so that there's no actual water touching the roots of your plant because you don't want to cause root rot. The pebble tray is supposed to kind of create a little microclimate. So filling that pebble trap with water is supposed to increase that microclimate and make the humidity slightly more. Again, I haven't found it made a huge difference to my plants anyway. It certainly didn't make a difference to the anthurium, and he was in like a deep, chunky pebble tray. But again, maybe that's just me not doing it properly. Other things you can do are grouping your plants. Liken this to being in a club and you're dancing up against sweaty people. Sweaty people make you sweat more, I think. For me anyway, I don't know. So imagine your plants are in the club, group them together, because that transpiration, they're releasing water, and that water can kind of feed into another plant. So it's a beautiful little ecosystem you're creating with the moisture if you group your plants together. So grouping is a really nice solution. I have all of my high humidity plants grouped together around the humidifier now to kind of create the ultimate microclimate of humidity. So another thing you can do is create a terrarium environment. Now, the key thing to remember with a terrarium is you kind of want airflow. In general, when you're increasing your humidity for your plants, you want your airflow to increase, because if it does not, when transpiration happens in plants, remember the water comes out of the plant. You don't want just stagnant water sitting around the plants. If the humidity in the air is too much, that water can't move away and create like a nice airflow, and fresh water can come out, because once the air is fully saturated, it can't absorb any water when it reaches that dew point. And what you're going to do, your plant then can't transpire anymore, and you're going to get issues like fungus and rot. So you need that airflow to remove water from the area so your plant can keep on transpiring nicely and getting that water out of it. Rot is bad. But a terrarium environment for something like a fern, absolutely ideal. Like a maidenhair fern do beautifully, because ferns are fussy. I stay away from ferns, to be honest. And alocasia. Ferns and alocasia, there's just too much. I can't be doing with that. But they would do really well in something like a terrarium environment where you're creating that like super high humidity for them to just munchy, munchy, munch. But again, airflow, don't forget about that. And of course, the last one is the humidifier, which is now off because it's making unexpected beeping and I don't want to ruin my brand new humidifier. But a humidifier is a great way to increase your humidity. Now, you can buy sort of oil diffusery ones that aren't so fancy. You just plug them in and they just go for a couple of hours. That's great. Group your plants around that and it'll be awesome. Then you can get ones like this, which is amazing. So excited to have found this, where I can set the humidity so it knows what the humidity is in the room that it's in or in the area that it's in. And I can say I want it to pump it up to 70% humidity. It reaches to 70%, turns itself off, and as soon as it drops, it puts it back up again. Absolutely amazing. This is kind of, I would say, the ideal solution for keeping your humidity constant. You're almost wanting to create a greenhouse environment. Greenhouses are cool because they actually maintain a standard level of relative humidity, which is why your greenhouse plants are super happy. And also why when you buy plants from someone who has a greenhouse and then you bring them home, they get super sad because they've been in this ideal environment, in fact, where they're super happy and living their best lives, and then they come to you where, let's be honest, probably 99% of us are not providing the ideal environments for our plants. Of course, they're going to be a bit sad as they readjust, and as you learn how to provide for them better, which, as you can see, is what I'm trying to do right now. So I hope that that kind of helped to demystify what humidity actually is, to show you that relative humidity is what we're talking about when we're talking about humidity for our plants, why it's important, particularly for our tropicals who are thinner celled, and that transpiration rate is kind of out of whack with the evaporation rate. And basically just how to keep your plants happy so that you do not end up with this. Anyway, I hope you liked that video and that it wasn't too waffly and cutty and you learned something from it. My plan is to do more of these botany kind of 101 videos showing you about photosynthesis, plant structures, things like that. So I promise to post more of those on the channel soon. I'm going to do my own drawings and things for those, so it's actually very legitimate. Thank you so much for tuning in. I genuinely really appreciate it. And if you like that video, please subscribe. That would be absolutely incredible. And of course, like the video. I mean, I'm not going to say no to that, but a subscribe would be amazing. And then I can just unobtrusively pop up on your timeline and you don't ever have to look for me again. I have great plans for videos coming up soon. I'm very excited for the next ones. I'm doing research for them now. So I'm going to create this wild learning experience for all of us, because I'm not going to lie, I'm still learning too. And I kind of think it's fun to learn together. So that's kind of where we're at. So thanks again for tuning in. I am Leafy Joy. You can find me on Instagram at leafy.greenfingers. Thanks again, and I will see you in another planting video soon. Also, I'm going to go and see if I can get this humidifier to work again, because I'm going to be proper sad if I've just ruined it. Right, I thought I would show you everyone in situ. Thankfully worked out what was wrong with the humidifier. I'm not going to lie to you, I was going to be a little bit sad there if it was already broken. It's also on maximum capacity, just to show how dramatic it looks. I'm going to turn him down in a second. But this is where all the potential crispy boys live. So you can see that is where little Anthurium papillamillion is, and the Syngonium rayi, who is actually nowhere near as fussy as I was anticipating. But this is my little humid corner. It's kind of like enclosed. But this room is amazing for plants, so I'll do a plant tour with you one day. Oh, it's starting to rain. I need to talk quickly, but as you can see, I have a plastic roof, which means a nice diffused light comes in. But also, it's really loud when it rains. So as you can see, Rosie's running away. Ah! And I will too. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you for the next one.